This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout. I'm your host, Larry Lawson, coming to you as always from the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Southern Command Post in beautiful Indian River County, Florida. And it's always a long week waiting to get back to all of you out there, all of my listeners, to continue our discussions into the unknown, the unexplained, the searching that we do to find out what's on the other side. And so much of that is based upon legend. Some of that legend is fact. Some of it is the product of somebody's overactive imagination. And some of it's a combination of both. But tonight, my guest is someone that goes out and spends time sorting out the facts of these legends, Mr. Mark Muncy. Mark is the creator of Hellview Cemetery, a charity haunted house in Central Florida that was so infamous it was banned by the city of St. Petersburg. Mark is an author of horror and science fiction, and he's spent over 3 decades collecting ghostly tales and reports of legendary beasts. Eerie Florida is his first work for the History Press, and he currently lives in St. Petersburg on top of an ancient Indian burial mound. With that, Mark Muncy, welcome to Paranormal Stakeout, my friend.
Hey, how you doing today?
I'm doing terrific. Legends, I mean, that's what so much of what we do is based on, and you're the man that's gone out there and searched out so many legends, especially in the state of Florida. But I got to ask you, I mean, I mentioned in the opening here, your charity haunted house was banned in St. Petersburg. You got to tell us why.
Well, we were kind of a victim of our own success. We started about 20 years ago. I think it was 1996. And we had been working for the big leagues. We'd been doing Halloween and Horror Nights up in Universal in Orlando, and had done a few other haunts professionally. And I was a new dad and decided, well, it's time to stop driving all over the state scaring people. Might as well just do it out of my own backyard. So a bunch of friends and I got together and built a little haunted cemetery. And while we were digging a grave, that was when we found shells and bones in the yard. And we said, oh gosh, what have we found? We better call the police, thinking we'd found like a grave site or something. And the police came out and said, no, this is archaeological. So we called, back then it was St. Pete Junior College before they actually became St. Pete College. And they sent out an archaeologist. And the archaeologist came out and said, "Oh, it's a shell midden, from the early Indians, the Tocobagas most likely." And he was like, "And I'm just glad it's not one of the lost cemeteries of St. Petersburg." And my eyes went, "What? Lost cemeteries of St. Petersburg?" And I'm like, "I don't know about this." And they're like, "Oh yeah, there were a dozen of them that were, the pioneers would set up a cemetery. These hurricanes and tropical storms would come in, everybody'd run away, and then they'd come back a few years later and go, oh, hey, look at all this flat land. Let's put a house there." And so there were a few lost cemeteries in Tampa Bay. And they'd found most of them now, but there's still a couple missing ones. And we learned one of them was called Hellview. And the Tales from the Crypt and Stephen King fan in me decided to call it Hellview, and that would be our graveyard, Hellview Cemetery. And so we ran it as a charity haunt for years. And we just kept getting bigger and better, and every year crazier and crazier, until finally the city was like, okay, we had one neighbor finally complain after 20 years. He had had a stroke and was convinced the devil was coming for him and didn't want a haunted house on his street. So until we get a new administration in the city, we've been dark for a couple years now.
Oh, that's a shame. And usually, obviously, do it over the Halloween season, I assume.
Yep. Made lots of money for local charities. Never made a dime for ourselves, but that was where we started collecting the legends, was through the old website for the old haunted house.
Oh, okay. So that's how you began this trek of legends. Now, what sort of legends do you investigate? Ghosts, UFOs, cryptoids?
You name it. We've Eerie, Florida, from History Press, has all of the above and more. Everything from Indian massacres to ghostly, Robert the Doll, the famous, infamous doll down in Key West.
Key West, yeah.
Up to the Gulf Breeze UFOs, up in the Panhandle, and then Pinky the Sea Monster, up at the St. Johns River, and the Skunk Ape, of course. Got to hit the Skunk Ape, and then all the ghost stories in between. So you're a busy man. Now, do you travel just in Florida? Do you go outside the state of Florida? We've done some preliminaries for future works. We've hit, of course, up to we're planning on Savannah and Georgia next, and working our way north, Charleston, South Carolina. You're in our sights, and the dream would be to do all the 50, and then maybe who knows. So
you're busy now. All the stories that you've come across, all the things that you've researched, there's got to be one that stands out the most. Which one would that be?
My favorite in the book, and probably the best one we studied, was the Gnomes of Bach Tower.
Well, I'll tell you what. We're going to take our first break here in just a second. And when we come back, I want to know about the Bach Tower, folks, in case you don't know, it's in the middle part of Florida. So when we come back from our break, I'd like to hear more about that. So stay with us, folks. We'll see you in just a couple of minutes.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am Dr. Carl O. Hellview, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Is it science or is it magic? Once a magical thing has been scientifically proven, is it no longer magic? Or is magic simply the science of tomorrow? Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, on The Science of Magic, a syndicated radio program dedicated to combining the science and magic of today's dynamic and controversial topics to co-create new solutions. By triangulating information from today's leading experts from the scientific and magical fields, we uncover expansive and evolutionary truths you won't find anywhere else. Join us daily on the X Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, as I interview the shared thoughts with the amazing guests from both science and magic. The resulting knowledge is unprecedented. As a gift to you, the listener, past episodes can be accessed on our website free of charge at thescienceofmagic.net.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
Hey folks, welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout. My guest tonight, Mark Muncy, the researcher of legend. And Mark, we're talking state of Florida here, and you were getting ready to discuss with us probably your most unusual or interesting experience while you were researching, and it was a place called Bok Tower. Now, if you could let my audience know, where is Bok Tower here in the state of Florida?
All right, Bok Tower is almost right in the heart of the state. It's in a place called Lake Wales, Florida, and it is the highest point in Florida, a whopping 223 feet above sea level, which I know is not much everywhere else, but in Florida, that's ginormous. That's bigger than Space Mountain. And, and it's got a lot of weird history, the area. Some people say it was formed by an old meteor, so the whole area has some oddities to it. There's a very famous, right next to it is a gravity hill called Spook Hill, which is one of those great places where you park your car, put it in neutral, and then it rolls uphill backwards. Of course, it's an optical illusion, but it looks awesome, and it's a great experience. And hey, one of those free attractions in Florida, which there aren't a whole lot of.
Yeah, it's only a couple hours for me. I've been up there. It is a pretty unique experience. But gnomes, that's gnomes. In
all right, so. Well, Bok Tower was built. We go into the history of Bok Tower. It was a it's a singing tower built by a guy named Bok, and he built it as a he wanted to make it a bird sanctuary basically, and he built this beautiful grounds and imported all these birds, and now it's home to tons of birds. But our story, one of the first emails we got years ago on the old Hellview.net. But back then it was even our GeoCities page and our AOL access. But we got an email from this little old lady who lived near Lake Wales, and she said back in the late 40s, early 50s, that she had lived on an orchard, an orange grove, near Bok Tower, within sight of Bok Tower. That's not narrowing it down too much because being the highest point in Florida and everything being so flat, you can see Bok Tower from miles away. Sure. But she was like, no, we were right behind it. And when she was living on this farm, they noticed one night that some of their fruit was missing, and a lot of it. So they decided, it must be rats or somebody stealing our fruit.
And when you say fruit, most of it over there is oranges and grapefruit.
Yeah, this would have been the early days of orange groves in Florida. So she, they thought, but fruit rats and stuff like that would leave little holes, or half-eaten fruit. These were just gone. Mm-hmm. So they put out traps. They put up some ropes. They set up like a little, try to catch what's coming through. And sure enough, they caught something, but not what they expected. What they caught was a little man about 6 inches high that was completely, covered in hair, so they knew it wasn't a baby. and he was screaming at them in a language they couldn't understand. And he was stuck in this little trap, so they didn't know what to do, so they called the police. And the police come out, and now it's not completely out of the ordinary, because at this point, circuses had been down here in Florida. Ringling was building his mansion, but the circuses wintered down here, so Gibsonton had already been founded, which is not too far from Lake Wales, which is a winter home for circus freaks. Tom Thumb, Ripley's museum was going up, so everybody kind of, they were like, oh, this is just some circus performer or something, but he's obviously not stealing all the fruit. And then the cops come out and they're like, well, the best we got on this guy is trespassing, and he's not, they didn't speak English, so he was just, it's nice to know policing hasn't changed that much in some ways.
Wait. Okay, being a cop, I got.
Yeah, so I wanted your opinion on this story.
You got some 6-inch tall man covered in hair, and you're telling me they just let him go because he wasn't trespassing?
Well, that was just, they couldn't figure out what to do with him, so they apparently took him. So what they did is they let him go, and they couldn't handcuff him because he was too tiny, and so anyway, they let him loose. A couple of days passed, they're still missing fruit. They're like, okay, we'll set up more traps. They catch the guy again. And this is where it gets interesting. They call the cops back. The cops this time put him in an orange crate and take him away. Okay? And guess what happens? All hell breaks loose. The next night, their house is pelted with rocks and sticks, and the trees are like shaking. They come outside, and there's dozens of these little naked men throwing crap at them. And, they don't know what to do. So they call the cops back.
Little naked men with hair all over them. Okay.
With hair all over them. So 6-inch tall. And the cops come back with the guy in the orange crate. They'd apparently tried a couple different translators, and they still couldn't get through to this guy in the orange crate. And let him loose. Now, when we were researching this, that was the most insane thing. And I'm like, I will never be able to use this story, never find anybody to verify it. And of course, this was ancient times. So when I first started coming up,
what do you mean by ancient times? You got to kind of put this in perspective as far as
late 1940s.
Okay.
So early 1950s. We're still not sure 100% time. And I had talked to the little old lady back in this would be 1996. When I talked to this lady, or 1998, I'm sorry, when I talked to this lady, and when I had called her the first time, because that email was just so brilliant. And we always hid a little gnome in our haunted house every year. It was just kind of a joke because of this story. But anyway, I'm like, well, we used to there was a rule. Weekly World News had a rule that if one person told you the story, it was true, and you run it. Modern journalism, it's 2 or 3 people tell the story, you can run it. Well, for us, we were like, we're never going to find 3 or 4 people for some of these stories, but we wanted to hit 2. So I was like, well, we'll never find one for the gnome. But on a last ditch effort, I posted on the old Facebook, you knew you grew up in Lake Wales if. And I said, hey, does anybody know any story about 1940s and little people invading an orchard? And sure enough, one of the people who worked in the police department there remembered the incident and remembered them trying to get translators for this guy. And so we had a backup. So we were able to work with the story. So knowing that we weren't going to get a picture of any little short naked men, I thankfully have a very... With hair all over them. I have a very talented illustrator, Kari Schultz, who's my fiancée, who worked with me on the book. And she drew a wonderful picture of that, and that's become kind of one of our calling pieces in the book.
Okay, I got to ask you the question. Fantastic story, typical of a lot of legends, I guess. But you've really never been able to, other than having 2 people. I do find it interesting you found somebody that was in the police department that could verify part of it. But how far can you take this kind of research and actually put some more meat to the bones, if you will?
Well, that's, we were hoping to get more. And from that one person who worked at the police department, they were able to give us the names of a couple of the cops that might have been involved. But of course, most of them passed on. So
any police reports? Did they write any reports? Anything in that?
That was the one thing this person says. He's convinced that there were reports filed, but we couldn't find any. We looked. And the Lake Wales Police Department was very helpful, and they were like, man, if this is true, we'd love to hear it because that's a great story. These are the same guys who, go and patrol Spook Hill, so they were excited.
Yes, that's true.
But no luck so far, but they're still digging. The reports from that time are pretty spotty. So, and we didn't really have an exact date. We have a time frame. It was either 49, 50, or 51, and it would have been in the summer. But, your years of reports to go through. So it's going to be interesting.
How much time do you actually take, are you able to take researching stories like this? And when do you draw the line saying, enough's enough?
Well, with the book, it was the deadline kind of hit us on this one. So we started, I've been collecting these stories for years. Mm-hmm. And when we decided to do the book, it was, okay, let's start doing the quick, nuts and bolts. And we basically had about 6 months to get it all done. And that's why some of the stuff, of course, I would love to go back through and research further on some of these things. But we had access to several historical archives. We had the St. Pete History Museum. Marta Jones, the head archivist there, is amazing. And she was able to get us a lot of stuff we wouldn't have been able to get. She helped us get the Mary Reeser files from the FBI for the Cinder Lady. Who spontaneously combusted. And that was interesting seeing papers with, J. Edgar Hoover's signature on them. And
okay, but the lady and there's, a lot of us have heard about spontaneous combustion, but tell us a little bit about that story.
Mary Reeser, St. Petersburg lady, a widow, late 1960s. She has dinner with her son. And then he goes home. She sits down in her little apartment in St. Petersburg, Florida, in her robe. That's the last anybody sees her. The next day, there's a mailman coming to deliver a package, and there's no answer at the door. And so he goes and gets the landlord. Landlord's like, well, she never leaves. So he goes to open the door, and it's hot to the touch. And they go, fire. So they call the fire department, police. They come out. They break down the door. And what they find is strong smell of smoke and some signs of fire damage. And where Mary Reeser was sitting in her robe, they find some greasy stains on the ground, a foot, and a shrunken skull, and little black bits that they think are teeth. And that is it. No bones, no nothing. And her chair is gone. And her couch is a little fire damaged. There's a clock next to her that's slightly melted and stuck at 4:20 a.m. But other than that, no sign of Mary except her foot. And
now, there's been stories, numerous stories over the years about people that have died from spontaneous combustion like that. Have you been able to research any of the other ones and compare them with this story?
Yeah, we've done some research. I mean, the theories were wild at the time. Ball lightning, electric. Most likely, and what the FBI finally decided was candling, which was basically you fall asleep with a cigarette, and it hits your robes or whatever clothes you got, and your own fat burns you like a wick, and you basically melt. Now, it's the equivalent, they were saying to destroy a body this much would take thousands of degrees burning for several hours to shrink a head like that and to shrink the teeth. But science says, most likely that it was candling, and that's, where the fat is smolders. It's a smolder burn. Okay. And eventually you basically boil down into nothing. And it is the same heat and the same pressure constricting. And the reason the skull doesn't burn is there's not enough meat up there. And the reason that the foot is left is because all that's left down there is pretty much bone and some skin. So the fuel to the fire basically has gone out. But it's still an eerie thing. The main guy who was on the case for the FBI, their chief forensics, he even said years later that it was the eeriest case he ever worked on, And if he had been living in any other time, he would have mumbled something about dark magic.
Interesting. Well, I can already tell we're not going to get through half the questions I want to ask you tonight because we're getting ready to come up on our next break. When we get back, I want to talk to you about your own personal paranormal experiences. So, folks, stay with us. We've got a lot to discuss with Mr. Mark Muncy. So stay with us. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Nemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created nemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
Hello, I'm Justina Marsh, and with my dad Pete, we are going to present a new show called Too Good to Be True. Together, we are aiming to discover more truths about this world and beyond. Do you have unanswered questions about the world? Do you ever wonder about aliens, conspiracy theories, or the universe? There are many shows discussing subjects such as pyramids or UFOs, but we want to relay this information based on our own research, including from spiritual means. Hopefully, listeners will be helped with their own beliefs and will appreciate the psychic insights that add to the previous research and information. We both look forward to sharing this insight and beginning this journey with our listeners. Visit xzbn.net for more information about when to listen.
Ancient prophecies, legends, and current events indicate we're entering a high-frequency era supporting enlightenment. During expansive times, old rules fail, necessitating access to the ever-shifting currents of life for guidance. There's an ancient form of shamanism through which we can obtain the information we need. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Art School, with a great new provision for those interested in spiritual evolution and personal empowerment. Galactic Shamanism, Art of the Ancients, Key to Tomorrow, is an upcoming series of leading-edge online affordable classes designed to guide and support you and your family during these times of transition. Embrace the magic. Empower your life. Study Galactic Shamanism at findyourpathhome.com.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
And welcome back, everyone, to this edition of Paranormal Stakeout with my guest tonight, Mark Muncy. Mark, wow, some interesting stories right here in Florida that I'd never heard before, and I thought I'd heard most of them. But apart from Little Hairy Men and spontaneous combustion, yourself, have you ever had the opportunity, really through your research, to get involved or conduct a paranormal investigation? I guess experience stuff on yourself.
Okay, well, I've got a story. I've done work. We've worked with Spirits of Tampa Bay with the great Professor Brandy Stark. Been on a couple of her ghost hunts. Went on some stuff at the Tampa Theater. They do a ghost thing every year. The Palladium, downtown St. Pete, and we've been on a few all around the state. The Lighthouse in St. Augustine, of course, and the Russ House up in Mariana. And, pretty much everything in between, Bellamy Bridge, you name it, the Skyway Bridge.
You need to come to Fellsmere, Florida, my friend. I am
excited to.
Okay.
But my experience, one of the first things when years and years and years ago, my children were very young, and we were on one of our first trips to St. Augustine, and we were taking one of the many, 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 many ghost tours that walk around and tell everything. And this was my first experience in St. Augustine. I had never really been. I didn't know much about it. It was just, everybody said you got to go. And sure enough, yes, if you come to Florida, you really should spend a day in St. Augustine. It's amazing. And then enjoy one of the many ghost tours. I highly recommend the Sheriff's Ghost Walk. He's amazing. But anyway, we're on a tour, and we're walking across from the Castillo, the big famous castle there, and there's the Huguenot Cemetery just outside the old city gates.
Right.
And they're telling a story there about a judge ghost who's looking for his teeth, Judge Stickney. When they dug up his body, some people stole his teeth. And they're telling this story, and I was a little tired, so I kind of wandered ahead. I knew we were going across the street over to the city gates, so I sat down over on the other side of the street. And my youngest daughter, at that point, was around 5 or 6, and she goes running off, playing with me, while Mom at the time and my oldest daughter were still with the tour. And my daughter comes up to me after a minute and says, Dad, we've got to watch out for Jack. And I'm like, what? She said, there's a little girl over there told me to be careful of Jack. And I'm like, okay. And she says, and he wears yellow, so we got to watch out for a guy in yellow named Jack. And I went, oh, okay, that's interesting. She's 5 or 6. I'm thinking imaginary friend, or maybe some other kids, told her something.
Uh-huh.
But then the tour group catches up. About a minute or two later, they cross the street and come over to the city gates. And the guy starts telling the story of the history of the city gates and how the gatekeeper there had been there for years. And when they just joined the United States, they had a yellow fever breakout. And the doctor was one of the first to die. The gatekeeper was one of the first to die. But he had a little daughter who hung out at the gate. And this daughter would tell people for weeks after her dad died, stay away from St. Augustine because it's, yellow fever has hit St. Augustine. And then she died. And people to this day see her ghost hanging around the city gates.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wait a minute. And I look up at the guy and I said, hey, could they have possibly called yellow fever Jack? He said, oh yeah, they used to call it Yellow Jack. And I looked over at my daughter, and goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps now just remembering this.
Wow.
Yeah. So how would she have known? How would she? So for that's my paranormal, Florida story. And sure enough, we had to throw that into the book.
Absolutely. You did. I'm aware that you also were involved in doing some research on the now infamous Dozier School for Boys up in the north part of the state.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
What did you find from that? I mean, explain to my audience too. I mean, most of us are familiar with it in Florida, especially in the paranormal field, just hearing about what happened at boys' school up in the north part of Florida that was infamous for kids that just disappeared and buried all over the grounds, I understand.
Yeah, and who knows where. There's rumors of the kids being sold and taken away. Kids just disappeared. Most places you go, if you're looking for the body of your cousin or your ancient uncle or whatever, every church, every hospital, every prison, everywhere has got records. You go there, they had one Boot Hill, they had 31 markers, but only 24 recorded deaths. So only 24 recorded deaths. School was open for over 100 years. But then you start looking into, they start, doing some research. Professor Kimberly over at USF, who's was the one who uncovered all this, she was looking into the allegations of abuse. And there'd been allegations of abuse at that school since it opened in 1911. Mm-hmm. And it was supposed to house the worst of the worst. And of course, within years, it was overcrowded, and this abuse from other students, trapped there was legendary. But then it spread to the staff, and the accusations were numerous.
It's definitely a dark spot in Florida's history.
Yep. And they only this year finally acknowledged, the Senate finally passed a bill saying, look, we're sorry. Yeah. But anyway, so she starts researching it, starts digging up the bodies, and there's 55 bodies in those 31 markers. There's supposed to be another graveyard, a second Boot Hill on the other side of the school, but no one knows where it's at. It was a hidden one. And then, the records are things like, would say, instead of saying dead, it would just say no longer here, presumed escaped, or child disappeared. That was actually one just says gone. And it's like, wow. And, they've started finally getting family, because most of these were orphans, kids with no homes, runaways. So, nobody's ever going to come claim these bodies, and nobody's ever going to come looking for them half the time.
What elevated this particular incident in Florida history to legend status, and why did it make it one of your scarier bits of research?
Well, like I said, we started talking to the White House Boys. These are the organization of the guys who survived. These are people who were incarcerated there, who were telling us the stories of what happened. And the White House was this infamous area they built that was supposed to be solitary confinement, but actually was what became a torture dungeon. They had industrial fans installed so they could turn those on to drown out the screams of the kids and what they would do in there. And one of the infamous security guards supposedly had a whip called Black Beauty that was 20 feet long, and you would hear it. It was so big that when he would wind it and crack it onto the kid's back, you would hear a tap, and a crack as it hit the wall, it hit the ceiling, and then come down on the kid's back. And one guy was telling us that he could still hear that in his sleep to this day. And, and the only reason he knew how many times he'd been beat was because the kid in the cell next to him had counted for him, because he had passed out after 15. And stories like, if you go to the White House Boys website, every one of them's a story. They're being therapeutic, getting this stuff out. But man, is it terrifying reads, and it will scar you, in many ways. And we were going to write about the ghosts, because there's stories you can still hear the whip, you can still hear the kids running around and all this stuff. But we couldn't even write about that just because the truth was just so much more horrible.
Well, like I said, one of the darkest times in, I think, Florida history. But you also you've done more than just ghosts. Well, I do want to talk a little bit about the Sunshine Skyway ghosts. Yeah. But I'd like to hear a little bit about some of the other things. I mean, I know that you've dealt with the old Hitler, the giant hammerhead.
Yeah, that's actually off the Skyway too.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about Skyway.
All right. Well, the Skyway is one of the most beautiful bridges in the world. It's iconic. It bridges the south of Tampa Bay, so it connects St. Pete to Sarasota. So instead of having to drive 3 hours around Tampa, you could make it to Sarasota in 45 minutes. Bradenton first, but, right there. And, it's just this beautiful bridge. And they had built, this is actually the new one, because the old one collapsed in 1980 when an oil tanker hit it. Yep. Now, it was already pretty infamous before that for being a notorious suicide bridge. Lots of people had committed suicides on the old bridge. And then there was a boat accident, the worst Coast Guard accident in Coast Guard peacetime history, happened right there as well, also in 1980. That happened in January. And then March, a freak storm comes as an oil tanker is coming in, and it plows right into the bridge. And the recordings are terrifying. The bridge is down. The bridge is down. Stop the traffic. The bridge is down. And a bus goes right off the edge of the bridge. A bunch of other cars. 23 people die in a space of minutes. And, just terrifying. And, so they build the new bridge, and they kept pieces of the old bridge as a fishing pier, so people could go through that. Well, people still see ghosts all over that bridge. There's a hitchhiking ghost, a classic, wonderful story about a girl who meets you in your car, and gets in your car, and as soon as you turn around to ask her where she's going, she disappears. And she's so famous that if you tell the toll collectors on the bridge that, I saw this girl, they go, oh, yeah, you saw her ghost. The old fishing pier, people see the bus still drive off the pier. Fishermen talk about seeing the bus drive off the pier in the morning. And the chills from that one come from most of the people say everybody on the bus is screaming except one guy in the back of the bus who's laughing. So, creepy stuff. And, of course, that water is legendary because that's where a famous hammerhead shark lives called Old Hitler. There's this 30-foot hammerhead shark, great white, scars all over his body of harpoons and hooks that tried to catch him, including one that's shaped like a swastika, which is where he gets his name. Well, there are lots of hammerheads out there, and there are some 20-footers and 10-footers. We've got a great picture of one all the way back in 1910 they caught out there in the book. But it's not one shark. It's an Old Hitler, actually, we found out doing research and looking into the legends. We found out that goes back to the 40s where they used to set up watch balloons because they were convinced that the Nazis were going to try to sink boats coming out of Tampa Harbor. And so they would set up the watch balloons, and every time those balloons would see a dark shape in the water, they'd go, oh my God, it's a sub. And it's like, no, it's a shark. And so that became the code for after a while, was they were just called Old Hitlers. And when the fishermen start hearing that, the next thing you know, it's one shark, it's legendary, and now that's where all the stories come from.
Okay. Are there any other water stories? I understand there's the Lake Astor monster, some sea serpents. I mean, do you get much of that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, North Florida is filled with them. South Florida's got mostly snake-like serpents that live near the Everglades and stuff. And this was even before people started bringing their pet boa constrictors. Some of these go back to the early settlers. There's one story about a giant snake growing across a river near you, down near Indian River, where the guys who report it, it's actually in one of the local papers down there back then, like 1860 something. They say the head was 3 feet on one side of the river sticking up, and the tail still hadn't come in on the other side of the river, and it was about as wide as a flour barrel.
I've seen some big snakes down here, but not that big. Well, listen, we're getting ready to take our last break. Like I said, so much more to ask. So, folks, stay with us. We've got a few more minutes that we're going to be talking at the end of this break. So stay with us, folks. Mark Muncy, Eerie, Florida. Be right back.
The Earth is under ever-increasing pressure from untenable lifestyles and growing populations. Yet, viable answers seem in short supply. What if I told you there's an ancient form that can empower you to take charge of your life? What if your entire family could be enfolded and supported by life itself, finding safe passage through challenging times? I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Art School, with great news: an upcoming series of leading-edge online affordable classes based in an ancient form of shamanism, easily learned and used by your entire family. Galactic Shamanism, Art of the Ancients, Key to Tomorrow are a series of online adult and children's lessons instructing your entire family on natural law, how to cooperate with and be supported by the powers of the universe. Visit findyourpathhome.com to find these unique and powerful classes.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Are you curious? Do you want to learn more about how the world works and have fun at the same time? Study coincidences with me, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on my Connecting with Coincidence radio show, here on the XZBN network. Listen to Jungians theorize, statisticians randomize, true believers evangelize, while I categorize. I dance to the rhythm of coincidences. People who experience me see more of them. Maybe something on the show matches a thought in your mind. Let us know. Expand your mind to the weirdness happening around you. Synchronicity spoken here, there, and everywhere. For more information, put Connecting with Coincidence in your search engine and find my website, my social media sites, and my blog.
What is truth? Historically, we viewed things as either being true or false. Now, as we enter a more expansive era, we find the question is not, is it true, but rather, how true is it? I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, host of the Science of Magic Radio, a syndicated, internationally broadcast radio program dedicated to uncovering this ever-expanding truth. Join me daily on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, as I interview today's leading experts from the fields of science and magic to uncover the hidden truth between the lines drawn in the sand. What we unearth in our discussions is not only amazing, but totally unprecedented. You won't want to miss a single episode. In service to our listeners, past episodes can always be found on our website with our compliments at thescienceofmagic.net.
Hey folks, welcome back to the show. Larry Lawson and Paranormal Stakeout with my guest tonight, Mark Muncy. I'd like you to take a look at his website, eerieflorida.com. Check out his book, Eerie Florida. It's about all the legends in the state of Florida. I'd also like to invite you to check out the terrific programming at www.xzone.net, all the terrific programming here on the X-Zone broadcast station, including yours truly and Paranormal Stakeout. So take some time to check out our other shows. And Mark, in our last few minutes together, I got to ask you, how often with these legends, as you research them for your book, how often were you able to totally disprove it as nothing more than a legend? There's no truth to it all. Do you have a percentage?
To give it a percentage, I would say a lot. Most of them, like I said, old Hitler right there being one of them, and the Casadega's Devil's Chair, that was pretty easy to disprove. And, and a few other, but they're still fun stories, and the history behind them still fun. There's some that we explore, like right now, they're working on making a movie about a legend called Mini Lights, which is there's 5 different versions of that legend here in St. Petersburg. Everything from a voodoo queen called Mini Lightning to little green lights to lizard people that chase little kids after dark. And it's some scary stuff when you start looking into the research behind it, and you find out, it was, the alligator farms in St. Petersburg used to, have, they would grab black kids and have them run around and have to lure the alligators out and chase them. And it's terrifying and things like that. And it's like, so is it a real legend? Yeah. And it's a creepy legend, but is the real truth behind it pretty scary too? Hell yes. And, Well,
let me ask you this question, because there was a recent event where a young lady ended up dying, I think committing suicide, over a legend called Slender Man.
Oh, yes. There's a Tampa Bay tie to Slender Man. Slender Man, there were, some girls tried to kill another girl. It's a famous case. There's a documentary about it and all that. Slender Man's one of those internet made up legends. It was one of those that was made for a Photoshop contest. And then they put it on a thing called Creepypasta, which is like a Wikipedia for urban legends. And then every kid can add to it. Well, there is a legend of about a trestle bridge monster in Tampa that was awfully close to Slender Man. It was basically this trestle bridge right behind a high school, and kids would dare each other to cross it. And you would, and of course there are lots of deaths at that bridge, because walking across the trestle bridge is for trains, not people. So people do die. But, that would definitely hide a monster. Well, the story goes, it's a body that looks like a guy in a suit that hangs out on the bridge. And he goes, help me, help me. And when you get close, it's actually this giant sea spider thing that's like an anglerfish. It uses the body as a distraction. Uh-huh. And when you get close and you're trapped halfway out on that bridge, this thing comes out and gets you. Well, Slender Man at that point was just a guy in a suit that hung around, children's playgrounds. Well, suddenly he started having tentacles and spider arms behind him and stuff like that. And so we think what happened is somebody in Tampa added to that creepypasta page, because they said, hey, we got a monster like this at our school. I'm going to add that to it. And we've talked to a few kids in that school who have been around that time who said, yeah, they used to hang out on the creepypasta sites, and they may have been ones that added to that legend. So gives us a Florida connection.
Okay. What's the oddest, strangest legend that you've looked into? Or oddest place?
Well, I got to say Casadega is the craziest place in Florida. That's the psychic commune. Mm-hmm. It's Tom Petty, God rest his soul, just did a song about it. He called it, my favorite quote about it, 35 acres of weird. And they even the whole town calls themselves where the Twilight Zone meets Mayberry. And it's a great little town founded by a psychic who was guided there by his spirit guide named Seneca. Built a big hotel and invited his psychic friends to come down from New York and live in Florida. And it's still there to this day. It's a creepy place. They have a cemetery next to it that they refuse to admit exists. And that's where the Devil's Chair is, which is a great legend in our book. And I highly recommend you pick it up from History Press, and you can learn about that and so many more crazy places in Florida.
Yeah. What's your favorite story?
My favorite story, besides the gnome, I really love that.
Yeah, I can't blame you.
I really like Pinky the Sea Monster, just because that is just such a great, he's our Nessie. He's a big boiled shrimp-colored Nessie that has a turtle shell on his back that lives up in the St. Johns River and was super famous in the 70s, right at the height of Nessie mania. And it's just the whole story's behind him. There's a bunch of monsters, sea monsters up in that area that all might be related to him. My favorite is the creature from Lake Helen Blazes, just because, Florida, we love naming things so creatively. And the Lake Astor monster we mentioned earlier, they're all tied into Pinky. And that was one of the ones my illustrator, Kari, just did a bang-up job on. So that just became my favorite story by default, because I think it has the best picture.
Do you do much with UFOs? The UFOs up in the Big Bend in Florida, for example.
Yeah, we talk about the debunking of Ed Walters, who was the guy who did the famous pictures up at Gulf Breeze, the big UFO flap in the 80s. But there were still hundreds of other sightings and that weren't explained. So, and to this day, there's stuff that's not explained. Now, do we think they're aliens? Who knows? There's an Air Force base up there. There's a top secret naval base up there. So if they're working on a thing together, we were hearing a lot about USOs, the submerged objects, the things that large black triangles that float under the water and then rise up above the boat and take off. Now, we talked to a bunch of captains who'd seen them and who'd taken pictures, but it's a black ship on a black sky. The pictures are not real convincing, but these guys, man, you talk to them, they've seen some stuff, and it's when they talk about it, they're dead serious. And they'll even tell you, I may have one or two, but when my depth finder goes from 200 feet to 12 feet, and then it came out of the water without making a sound and hovered above me. Of course I took my pictures, but look at them; they're terrible. It's like,
well, it's so many legends, so many stories, all the stuff that you have you've researched. Where do you stand on it? What's your position on the paranormal?
Well, there was an old thing, Shirley Jackson in The Haunting of Hill House, one of my favorite books. She had her scientist who led the investigation of Hill House. He had this term, he called it preternatural. It wasn't supernatural, it was preternatural. It's just stuff we don't understand yet. It's something that there's some scientific behind this. It's just, you can't really, you can't make a proper investigation of it, because if you tell somebody, oh hey, I want to study about this ghostly hand that walks through a wall every night, they're going to look at you like you're goofy, and you're not going to get any funding for that, or any serious funding. But it's one of those things.
What do you believe?
Personally, like I said, I think there's some odd stuff out there that we don't understand. I've seen some crazy stuff while doing all this. And my daughter's experience, I've had some experiences in the past that I can't understand. I don't want to call them something that I don't, are they ghosts? Are they phantasms? Who knows? But, I know there's more to the world than we see. There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
Okay. So what's in the future for Mark Muncy?
Well, we're doing a follow-up to Eerie, Florida, because we're already in our third print. And if you'd like a copy, eerieflorida.com, we have a local bookstore where we sign, and my illustrator will actually be sketching them for you for just paying the price of shipping on top of the book, and they'll still ship them to you. But we're doing a follow-up for that. We're working on that, early days. And I'll be talking to you. I'm going to come down your way and see if we can work some of your stuff in. And then, like I said, beyond that, we'll see where else we can go. There's a lot of other states out there that might need an Eerie book.
Well, we're going to look forward to hearing that. And I do want to make mention to everybody that's listening. If you're in Florida, the first part of November, we've got our fourth annual Para-Unity Conference in Fellsmere. Our own Rob McConnell is our lead speaker, and we're looking forward to it. So if you get a chance, come out and join us in Fellsmere the weekend of November 3rd through the 4th. And Mark, obviously, you'd be more than welcome to come down and join us also. We'd love to see you there sometime.
Oh man, that would be awesome. But that weekend we're in Bradenton signing at a Books A Million. So.
Okay. We'll have to talk to that. So you got your next book coming out. How does your family feel? I mean, obviously your fiancée works with you, but how do your kids feel about this?
Well, like I said, they've seen some weird stuff too. They also both like to keep an open mind. My youngest, who actually had the experience, that's one of her earliest memories. But to this day, she's like, was it a ghost? I don't know. Could have been something else. So, so she's none of us have been 100% convinced, but there are definitely. But open-minded, definitely open-minded.
And I guess that's where we all need to be. I look at things like I look at it this way: there's a whole lot out there, same as you. We just don't know the answers to, but it's happening. We've all had our experiences, But I want to take a moment to really thank you for being with us tonight. I know that you had some other commitments tonight, and you came on the show anyway to be with us, so I truly, truly appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to your second book. What's the second book going to be called? Do you know yet?
We're kicking around Strange Florida because there's a lot of other adjectives we can use.
Okay. Well, we will look forward to seeing Strange Florida. And folks, like I said, visit Mark's website, eerieflorida.com. Also, don't forget to check out the great X-Zone Broadcast Nation programming. So with that, folks, it's been a great night. Thanks for being with us, Mark. We'll see you next week, folks, on the other side.